Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a safe Halloween. Last night we went trick-or-treating, and I guess about half the lights were off, half the house lights were off, but we still got a good haul. There were a lot of people out anyway, most people without masks, and I thought that it was interesting because people would normally go to like the park without a mask on, so I thought it was funny that they were wearing masks. Like parents who don't usually go up to the door are wearing masks. I thought it was weird. But I guess these things happen. But it was fun. My kids had fun, and I don't think they really cared about the light. Like it was obvious which houses were participating and which weren't. So I think that was the biggest worry. And there was enough. There was enough. Hopefully we get back to regular Halloween by next year. Fingers crossed. But I'm not holding my breath, and you'll see why as we get into this show. But first, Will Ferrell lookalike and McCain heiress marrying former finance minister Bill Morneau says he was thinking of leaving for OECD job before the We Charity debacle, because it was quite inconvenient that he had to repay that $41,000. And had he left beforehand, he probably wouldn't have to repay that. So, he was thinking about it. There's probably other reasons too, but he was thinking about it, says him. Here is Justin Trudeau, and there was a big to-do about this yesterday. I'm going to highlight this for a little bit of a different reason. But Trudeau says, can't yell fire in a movie theater. Trudeau condemns France attacks, but says free speech has limits. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau defended free speech on Friday, but added that it was not without limits and should not arbitrarily and needlessly hurt certain communities. In an unrelated story, Prince Trudeau blackface costume causes stir at Prince George High School. The Prince George School District said it intervened immediately after a photo of a high school student appeared costumed as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in blackface spread on social media. I just thought that was quite funny. Free speech has limits. You don't want to unnecessarily insult somebody or whatever. And then, well, it's Justin Trudeau, so foot, enter mouth. Now, a lot of people were trying to make hay out of this. In Canada, there have been limits on free speech for a very long time. This is nothing new and nothing surprising from this government at all. And not what are you going to do, but if you want to see change, you need to do more. Because as far as I understand it, Canadians are enthusiastic about this. In fact, wear your mask, you racist Nazi. Right? Can't do this. Justin Trudeau can dress like this. But if a high school student reflects back to the country what the Prime Minister is projecting, then they get sanctioned. This is a problem, says the Prince George School District, but nobody in Trudeau's cabinet thinks it's an issue, right? So his free speech is trampled all over. And again, right, what are the limits? What are the limits for Justin Trudeau? What are the limits for the Prince George School District? Who gets to decide? It used to be that there was law and there was freedom of speech. And as long as you weren't inciting violence against people, hey, everybody, we should go hurt this group because X, because whatever, then you were free to say it, right? And yes, bad taste. It was bad taste. And this would probably have been in bad taste regardless of Justin Trudeau, right? But this is making a point, perhaps poorly, but still making a point. And I hope this makes a point. Like Justin Trudeau is trying to walk a fine line. There have been multiple terrorism attacks since Mr. Macron came out against Islam and all of the comments that he said recently. That's what's ignited this firestorm. But in Canada, we've had limits on free speech for a long time, and we've got limits now on what you're allowed to wear outside. So if this surprises you, well, welcome to 2020. Start paying attention. Like, seriously, time to pay attention was a few years ago, right? Fred says, I don't know what this is. Oh, the virus. I'm like, what is this? Crochet? The virus, and then you take the virus off and it's Agenda 21, right? I thought I was going to start with a bunch of memes this morning, but the free speech blackface thing just kills me. I thought it was super funny. So yeah, the Agenda 21. We're going to get into talking about what exactly is going on with these PCR tests and the cycles, and what Mr. Fauci says. Fauci knew, at least since July, that most COVID cases are false. The U.S. routinely uses 42 to 45 cycles. Fauci says any positive tests above 35 cycles is a false positive. This is what the whole pandemic is based on. Fake test results. Watch Fauci admit it. And I'm just going to cue this up. Hold on. Okay, here we go.
That if you get cycle threshold of 35 or more, that the chances of it being replication competent are minuscule. So that if somebody, and we have patients, and it's very frustrating for the patients as well as for the physicians. Somebody comes in and they repeat their PCR and it's like 37 cycle threshold. But you almost never can culture virus from a 37 threshold cycle. So I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period. Right. Again, a good question. And
sorry, microphone issues. Sorry, that's Fauci talking about the cycle thresholds, the PCR tests, and have CT values. That's what cycle thresholds are, CT. And positive controls 27, but we're up into the 38 area, 39 area for PCR tests. Anything above 36, he says, is a false positive. I was looking for this chart, and it's queued up, but I guess it went to sleep. Here it is. Canadian lab CT value, prominent experts say anything over 30 is likely too high. And we've got province, positivity cutoff, and then the source. And so Quebec is 45, Manitoba's 40, BC is 35 to 40, Alberta's 35, New Brunswick's 40, Newfoundland's 33, Nova Scotia's 33 to 35, Ontario 38 to 45, Saskatchewan 36. So, and here's this is a Public Health Ontario document. I've used this before. This is talking about the threshold line and then what to do with these values up here. I'm not competent enough to explain this graph in detail, but please do have a read through. The link is in the description. Link to this is in the description as well. Here's Dr. Yaf talking about false positives.
I think a lot of people think that testing is going to really solve the whole problem, and it isn't. It's one component of a response. If you test somebody today, you only know if they're infected today. And in fact, if you're testing in a population that doesn't have very much COVID, you'll get false positives almost half the time.
So we're talking about a population that doesn't have very much COVID, being the province of Ontario, having mandated tests and more tests than we've ever done before, and numbers that are absolutely not in line with needing the interventions or the economy-killing interventions that are being forced upon us, right? Like we've got 320 people in the hospital, 73 in the ICU, 54 on a vent. We have 3,800 vent beds, but they say that 350 and we have to turn off all the surgeries because that becomes not manageable. But 350 province-wide? Should that be a bottleneck that we're accepting 8 months later? That's outrageous. Here's Milhouse Van Houten, and he says, here are the official Ontario ICU models for the second wave. The Ontario actual line has been extended to here. See blue line to the right of the star icon to show progress since the models were released. In short, models suck, reality is better. And here's the graph. I'll get myself out of the way here. Hold on. But you see the blue line. We're well below, and like this is ICU bed occupancy, right? We've stayed well below, despite the tests and all these positive cases. We've not gone anywhere near the medium scenario. We've gone near the low scenario, but I mean, the tests are very, very flawed, right? So what is the standard? What are we expecting to happen before we get rid of these COVID restrictions, before we stop threatening small businesses with arbitrary closures, right? I think that there's a responsibility, and the businesses are starting to stand up. I'll show you that in just a second. Here's the FDA PCR test, page 38. Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus or that COVID-19 is the causative agent for clinical symptoms. So this is an FDA paper, and well, I guess I'll show you. Hold on, because I like to show you. Link is in the description. You can check it out for yourself. But this is the COVID 2019 novel coronavirus real-time PCR diagnostic panel. This was released in July, so we knew this in July. And on page 37, it says limitations, and then page 38, it outlines the limitations that PCR tests are not. Limitations. So page 38, sorry, limitations, and then on page 39 it says detection of viral RNA, which is what's measured in a PCR test and amplified 30 or 40 cycles up, right? You see? Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus or that COVID-19 is the causative agent for clinical symptoms. You might just have a cold, says the FDA. Here is Doug Ford, and he says, I've asked our public health experts to come back next week with a plan to begin to ease restrictions in a way that safely allows businesses to start opening back up after the 28-day period is over. Together, we will come back stronger and more united than ever before. Somehow it seems empty. I'm glad come back stronger wasn't like build back better. Almost there, right? Almost there. Come back stronger, build back better. I'm making that distinction. He's likely not using that, but I'm not going to listen to this because Doug Ford makes me angry. Here's the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I've said a lot that we need to stand up by businesses standing up. You need to put pressure if you own a business on your local Chamber of Commerce, and they will in turn put pressure on the Canadian Chamber of Commerce or the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and they will stand up and say, our members require more proof, please. Hand that over, or we'll tell our members that we're going to support them in lawsuits, and that'll tie up the legal. The government just needs that threat, because at that point in time, they know they won't win. They can't. It'll be too much. They wouldn't go down that road, right? And so you see Doug Ford saying, yes, we're going to open up, but this is what the Canadian Chamber of Commerce said. Credible, timely data and complete information are vital components of decision making for any organization. This is particularly true of our political leaders as they try to navigate COVID-19 and craft appropriate responses. More fulsome data, like what we saw released in Ontario yesterday, is long overdue. This is exactly the sort of information decision makers ought to have in their hands to make informed decisions. It's unfortunate that this apparently wasn't the case before now. We are hopeful similar and expanded data releases will occur in other jurisdictions and on an ongoing basis. Full information is required to make decisions that accurately target COVID-19 while minimizing collateral damage to other health considerations and our economy. This is the first group that I've honestly seen talk about other health considerations and our economy, because those are both. Health is wealth, okay? If you are a poor country, if you can't afford to keep your hospitals running, then more people die. It's very, very simple. It's very easy to see the correlation between rich countries and healthy people, right? And that is partially why Doctors Without Borders, blah, 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 exists. But at the same time, you cannot tank your economy in pursuit of the eradication of a virus that has the survival rates that we're seeing. Unless you're the United Kingdom. Here we go. And I'm showing you this because we're going to go a little bit international here. But I'm showing you this because if you think that this can't come here, welcome to 2020. Time to pay attention. Time to pay attention was a few years ago. And here we are, right? This is the United Kingdom. This is Boris Johnson, a very populist president. Populist prime minister for the UK. People were upset that he won because he was being compared to Bolsonaro and Trump. And here he is doing this, CP24. Unless we act, we could see deaths in this country running at several thousand a day, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said as he announced a new month-long lockdown for England. A new month-long. Before, the first lockdown was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 8 months later, we're still in a form of lockdown with 50-odd people in the ICU and nowhere near capacity, and yet no move to address that. No move to address the false positive numbers in the cases, and Britain moving into lockdown. Here's the CBC News article. British Prime Minister imposes new lockdown in England as national COVID cases top 1 million. It's all cases. It's all cases. And I would show you the same chart. I don't know if they've got the death chart in England. Hold on, I'm going to go see if I can find it. Okay, here's the most updated daily deaths. It says tested positive for COVID-19 at the time of death, 137. Are they using PCR tests? How many cycles are they using? I would love to know. And a positive test result for COVID-19 was not received, but COVID is mentioned on their death certificate. So that's 2. So 139 if all of them are COVID deaths, for sure 100%. So yeah, I don't know. That's a little suspect to me. To be using a million cases, if a million cases results in 137 daily deaths, what's the regular death rate in the United Kingdom? Like, is that meaningfully above or below? You know, like there's so many bits of data that we don't have. It's like just getting the information of how many people died in a car accident and not finding out how many people like were driving that day or all of the other associated data, right? And just reporting breathlessly on the deaths all the time. That's the same comparison. And like, my goodness. And the cases, how many people are driving? Look, there's so many potential deaths. All of you are driving. There's so many drivers. You could be dying in the car. Oh no. it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous. Okay, here's Fox News, and we're getting into the second phase of this. So we're testing for COVID after death to confirm, but we're still using the same flawed PCR test with 50% positive or 50% false positives potentially if we cycle too high, and we are cycling too high. And here's Fox News talking about freedom in New Zealand, and I'll show you why I think that perhaps this is coming here, despite Brian Lilly telling us that it's not. Here we go.
But anyone who loves freedom should take note, because the Kiwis have a terrifying new response to rising COVID case numbers. They're throwing people into quarantine camps.
If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility longer. So I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test.
Actually, I would look at that and say, I'll see you in court. I'll see you in court, Jacinta. The thing is here, it's so nicey nice. It's so nicey nice. Like, oh, why wouldn't they take the test? We just want to know that you're safe. You know, they'll take the test, or they'll stay here forever, right? Play Hotel California. Check in anytime you like, but you can never leave. Yeah, that's concerning. Here's an article out of Australia, Australian Gizmodo. It says, there are no COVID internment camps in Canada or anywhere else, right? So that's October 28th. The Fox News segment was dated October 27th. So that's the Prime Minister of New Zealand saying, and she just won like a big majority. Like people were clamoring for it. I think that's coming here. It's just unbelievable. But Gizmodo takes aim at Randy Hillier, and man, send him this segment starting at whatever time index this is. It says there are no COVID internment camps in Canada or anywhere else. Earlier this month, anti-mask Ontario member of Provincial Parliament, MPP Randy Hillier, waved a sheet of paper on the Parliament floor demanding details from Premier Doug Ford's administration on quarantine internment camps in a spot-on impression of a prosecutor in a courtroom drama. Hillier told them, surely this government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast, adding how many of these camps will be built and how many people does this government expect to detain. There is no evidence that the Canadian federal government is using COVID-19 as a cover to construct internment camps and forcibly round up citizens, but the theory, sprung from a mix of QAnon-style tea leaf reading and pseudo-gotcha journalism, has taken root in the inboxes of Canada and throughout the conspiracy clear web. I don't know what the conspiracy clear web is. Maybe I should look into it. I heard one. I saw not to go on too much of an aside, but I saw a conspiracy pyramid that said birds aren't real right beside QAnon. And I had to message my brother saying, birds aren't real? What is that? Have you heard of this crazy thing? And he laughed and said that he had. And I was like, I've never heard of this. I've definitely eaten a chicken. Anyway, Toronto Sun says, Trudeau not building secret COVID-19 internment camps. I think they're protesting a little too much. This is Brian Lilly. Controlled opposition much? No, Justin Trudeau is not creating internment camps to lock people up during COVID-19. Despite the emails you may have received, the social media posts you have read, this is not happening. Here's CBC, just to give you a preview of where I'm going with this. From October 15th, Public Health Agency of Canada considers quarantine centers for Pigeon River, Fort Frances. And here's John Tory. Today I have the pleasure of joining Health Minister Patty Haydu and Dr. Eileen De Villa to announce the opening of an isolation center in Toronto. This center will play a key role in our continued response to COVID-19. This was September 11th. So like this saying, this is the video that the Gizmodo article was talking about, but dismissing this out of hand. Just don't believe your lying eyes, citizen. Like, my goodness, no, Justin Trudeau is not creating internment camps to lock people up during COVID-19, despite the emails. Okay, I've been getting all the information sent to me, but let me assure you, I know. Wink, me and Justin, we're good friends, wink, wink, right? What? You know why? You know what? What did they tell you? Back to this. In most instances, the claim is the same. Trudeau and his Liberal government are building secret internment camps to isolate people during COVID-19, and the media simply won't tell you about it. That's not the claim at all. The media is telling you right here, you're just lying about it. Right here. A number of ports of entry between Canada and U.S. borders have quarantine centers located nearby. Yeah, the problem is they're not just for COVID-19 patients. That's not it at all, Mr. Lilly. Back to this. This wasn't a solicitation. Oh, okay, so It says the government of Canada is considering engaging a third-party service provider for federal quarantine isolation sites that will be used to house and care for people for public health and other related federal requirements associated with the COVID-19 pandemic response, the posting said. So that's as mushy language as you're going to get, because everything's pretty much related to the COVID-19 pandemic response these days, like everything. All the fact that we don't have a budget, that's the COVID-19 response related. So the problem is the language is really mushy, and try and hold somebody accountable in the government at this point in time. He says this wasn't a solicitation for bids or a promise of contracts. This was a request to the private sector to say, hey, if we need to isolate people, what do you have that we can use? Yeah, because we don't want to build isolation centers, but if you make us build isolation centers, what do you got? That got taken by some to mean internment camps were coming. That's how Ontario MPP Randy Hillier puts it in question to the government. And again, you can see the video. And somebody was complaining that this was a troll account. It was just the most recent version of this video that I could find. So, and I shared it this morning, and somebody was like, "That's a troll account." I was like, "Well, yeah, but I saw the video before." So anyway, regardless, here's John Tory, Rogers owner, Rogers controlling trust member, and all of that other stuff, and mayor of Toronto as well. Rich man, right? Isn't that interesting that Bill Morneau is connected to rich people, and Irving's connected to the Trudeaus, and Rogers is connected to John Tory. They're all in leadership positions. It's weird, right? Isn't that odd? Didn't people not like that very short time ago? Wasn't that a problem before? Wasn't it a conflict of interest? Yeah. Isolation center, right? Isolation center. Here's another one. Isolation center. Nothing to worry about? I don't know. Here's the tender, right? This was the contract that went out, the bid saying that we're looking for it. And this guy's saying the Canadian government has removed the RFQ to build their isolation centers across Canada from their website. And Alvin says just means the RFQ is most likely turned into a PO. That's all. So somebody's got the contract. People were joking it's probably SNC Lavalin. ST says this, and I asked for the link to the original, but this is the service provider for federal quarantine isolation sites, and you can see the number and the issuing organization and blah, 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 blah. So it looks like it's moved from one government, like one spot in the government machine to the next spot, right? Like move this from pending to happening, right? Here's Christina. She says, I'm sorry, Brian, but they do exist, and Alberta has Section 39 for months now, process for apprehension and detention using a Section 39 order. Where this facility is located or how many have been apprehended under the order has not been shared by AHS. So the location is not shared, and how long and all of the other information is not shared. Do you have rights? So this is the process for apprehension and detention using Section 39 Certificate of a Medical Officer of Health, previously Form 3 under the Public Health Act. So this applies to a confirmed case of COVID-19, a person returning to Alberta after having traveled internationally, close contact of a person who is confirmed as having COVID-19, or a person with symptoms of COVID-19. If you get a cold, welcome to being under the mandate and purview of Section 39. I have a feeling that's going to become, you could write a whole graphic novel about that, right? I'm pretty sure you could. So that's concerning. I think that's not great, right? As far as things go. And combine that again with the high PCR cycles, or high CR cycles, and the PCR's false positive percentage, and the fact that the PCR test was not supposed to be used diagnostically, and mush it all together with the isolation centers and the fact that there is a lot of controlled opposition out there trying to tie any idea of this obviously happening thing, at least in Australia, and New Zealand, and in Toronto and up north, that we're onto something probably, right? Like that, and that's concerning. That's concerning. I would much rather that we not be building internment camps or isolation camps, or whatever you want, COVID-19 response camps, whatever you want to call, whatever language you want to give it, as long as they can take you there and you don't have the recourse of a lawyer, as long as they can keep you there and say, you need to take this test, and when you take this test, you can leave, and until you take this test, you can't. And if they can say that without me having legal options, that's a really big problem. That's a really big problem, because they've got all the legal options. We don't, right? If they decide that you've got COVID-19 because of their flawed test, and then they try to take you to their isolation center, and you say, but I just have a cold or whatever, allergies, a scratchy throat, then you've lost all power. Like we are not sovereign individuals at that point in time, right? And for the greater good, for the greater community good, yeah, slippery slope, right? Maybe we could use that money we're using to build these intern camps to bring clean water. Liberal government will miss drinking water targets by years, CBC News survey shows. Lloyd Longfield, the guy who was talking about the sacred government documents the other day, remember him? Sounded like an idiot. He was on the, we had a community call. So 5,000 people were on the community call. It was like you could ask the politicians questions, right? And I asked a question, I used it on my show. But during that, he was talking about how the Liberal government are on track to get this done and blah, 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 blah. Is he lying or just easily convinced by his lying leaders? Like, it sounds maybe easily convinced by the lying leaders. Somebody told him to call those redacted documents sacred. I wonder what he'd do with a redacted Bible. Is that still is that still sacred, or just because it says Bible on the front, if all the words are blacked out? Idiot. Back to this global news. Moving on. A recent poll found that many Canadians will be watching the 2020 U.S. election closely, with 60% saying they're concerned about potential violence if President Donald Trump loses. I thought that was the strangest headline. Like, people are worried about violence if Donald Trump loses? Yeah, but my goodness, Biden would be a disaster on every front. Like, the Obama years, they just kind of ignored Canada. Remember the XL pipeline? He just didn't do anything with it. It just sat there. Just didn't do anything. Oh yeah, maybe I'll make a decision 8 years later. Unbelievable. They just ignored us. And that's better than Trump, but because they just let NAFTA and they just let the steel go, right? Like, they just ignored it all, right? And Trump was like, you're taking advantage of us and you won't take advantage of us anymore. So better for Canada? I think better for Canada having a partner who's invested in it, right? Rather than just shrugging their shoulders and not giving a rat's behind about us. Moving on, I've talked about this before. This Toronto area lawyer had to flee the country after taking on the tow truck industry. The tow truck industry is supported by the police, and the police are moonlighting. Moonlighting is maybe a good way to put it. In businesses that are associated, it sounds great, right? Oh, I'll call you a tow truck. I know a great company. They're very reputable because I own them. And but it's very competitive, right? And apparently, like, there's tow trucks been on fire, and who are you going to call, right? If your tow truck company that's in competition with another tow truck company is lit on fire and you get the wrong cop, my goodness, right? So there's some crazy stuff going on. I remember when they were trying to stamp out the Hells Angels in Quebec and Northern Ontario, and a little bit in Toronto, I guess, when I was growing up still. But the cops were trying to stamp out the organized crime because the organized crime was bad for people. It was dangerous, don't you know, right? Sure. And they didn't have mass shootings and stuff, and there was no sword attacks. Just wait for it. But it was safer, or it was dangerous, so they stamped them out. And now, who's the organized crime? Yeah, those who you trust the most, right? So very interesting where that's going. This is just strange, the timeline to me. Suspect arrested after 2 dead and 5 injured in Quebec City sword attack. Why are they not calling this a sword attack? Is an awful way to die, and especially in 2020, like, very, very strange, right? Time to ban swords. Yeah. A suspect was arrested early Sunday morning in the historic district of Quebec City after 2 people were stabbed to death and 5 were injured by a man police say was dressed in a medieval outfit and brandishing a sword. Police were called to the area shortly before 10:30 p.m. on Saturday on Halloween and discovered victims in at least 4 locations, including near the Chateau Frontenac Hotel and on Rempart Street, according to Radio Canada. After a 2.5-hour manhunt, the man was arrested shortly before 1 a.m., about 1 kilometer north in the area's City Old Port. So, I wonder, that's not great on Halloween, right? To have a guy in a sword, like a real sword, walking around. I wonder if they used any kind of Amber Alert or anything like that. If not, why not? Because that's dangerous, right? Last story for today. Yesterday there was a protest at Dundas Square. It looks like there's a lot of protests happening every Saturday in Dundas Square. 12 p.m. gathering of protesters. Everyone is peaceful. They'll be marching. There's a Canada upside down, and it's anti-lockdown from what I could tell. Oops. I'll move me. I was in the way there. Anti-lockdown. Ha, hilarious. There you go. And the lockdown, from what I can tell. And quite a few people. Hundreds. Maybe 200. Maybe more. 250. Just a ballpark. But yeah, a lot of people. So very interesting to watch what's happening, and to see the media deny, while at the same time moving forward with their plans. Right? No, don't look here. There's no isolation centers, no internment camps, no nothing. Nothing. Don't be worried, citizen. Trust me. I'm Brian Lilly, and I know. Just take my word for it. Okay, I guess. Nope. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that we don't see the obvious slide into the dystopian post-freedom world of you've got a cough and get into this camp for your and your family's safety, right? And no, you don't get access to the internet while you're here. And yes, you just need to submit to this test. And once you do that, you can leave. I'm pretty sure there's precedent on that in Ontario court system, or in our Canadian court system. I'm pretty sure that's a violation of charter rights. However, I don't know if that's going to matter. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful